Welcome back to the ID Race channel. Really appreciate you guys for tuning in. Definitely overwhelming support over the last few videos that have dropped. Really wouldn't be doing this stuff unless you guys are watching. So definitely keep hitting the like, subscribe, sharing it with your friends, commenting below on what you guys think I'm doing right, wrong, or indifferent. In today's episode, we will be going through and doing a compression test as to how I do compression tests and the tools that I use that make me comfortable and confident that I'm producing a product that I can stand behind as well as drive. So without further ado, I'm gonna show you guys my compression tester, which really, I've never seen anybody do any reviews on them. Normally I see like the Rotary Master compression tester or people using like a regular piston engine compression tester with the Schrader valve removed to be able to see the pulses on the dial for the gauge itself. I do something a little bit different. Maybe you've seen it before, maybe this is the first time you've ever seen it. This is how I like to do it and be able to have a full view and not an average on what my actual compression is across all phases of rotary engines. So let's check it out. So what I use is what's called a Rotary Diagnostic System Compression Tester. This compression tester is model RECT-TRTA. I'd never be able to repeat that as to what it actually is if you were to ask me. I just say it's the Rotary Diagnostic System Compression Tester. Oh my gosh, I should probably re-record that. Rotary Diagnostic System Compression Tester. Pretty simple system. You have these little guys, these go in the block, then these just basically adapt right onto it like a normal compression tester would have. And then you have some pressure solenoids that go to, or pressure sensors, shouldn't say solenoids, pressure sensors that go to our little reader box. That reader box plugs in with a micro USB and actually plugs into our computer. So this computer, we're gonna read the hardware, which is this guy here, and then we open the file in a software format. What we're doing today is we have this 13B, it's been overheated, blown water jacket, can't run for more than 10-15 minutes before the coolant system starts to pressurize, undrivable. So with that, this motor might be a good motor still, right? So we might have good rotors, rotor housings, cast irons, who knows? We wanna make sure this engine could be potentially good for usable parts in the future. So with that, I'd like to buy this engine from the customer as a core to go towards his bill. I do these things, right? The nice part about it is we have this motor right here that the customer purchased from another person of mine that I built an engine for, decided to go a different way on his project, and he sold this engine. Well, when he sold the engine, this person bought it and asked if I would be willing to install it. I asked him, what are you gonna do with the engine? He said, what would you like to do? I'd like to compression test it, see if it's not a blown apex seal or damage internally beyond just a overheating or a coolant passages. I'm okay with that. I won't use the irons, but the rotor housing or the rotor housings, rotating assembly, some of those parts could be very valuable to somebody else. This is an S4NA motor, so not everything is premium for a price out on marketplace. A lot of the parts on the internals of the engine really aren't sought after. So a couple $100 towards his bill, I'm sure he'll be happy with that. We're gonna do a compression test. Let's get after it. We'll get these guys installed, the software up, and you guys will see what I'm talking about. I do have a battery charger on. We got that going just to make sure that we get good revolutions on the engine and get a good read on the test. So let's do it. Now, in order to get a good read on a compression test, I always like to at least heat cycle the engine. Now, this motor does run, mind you, it runs very rich. It has low compression on startup, or it fights to start. Could be fuel related, it could be unrelated to a lot of the compression issues that you might have for hard starts. Whether it be, there could be vacuum leaks, there could be injectors clogged, there could be a lot of things, but we're not gonna worry about that. It runs, it warmed up. We got about 5-10 minutes on the heat cycle. We shut her down. We have everything hooked up now. All that means is we have our pressure sensors plugged into our rotors 1 and 2. Power is hooked to our battery, which was why we have our little green light on. And then we have our micro USB running to our computer. So now we just boot up the software. Always remember, pull your EGI or fuel pump or ignition. You basically just want to make sure it doesn't start on accident with your pressure sensors plugged in, because that can damage the pressure sensors themselves. We pulled our EGI fuse out of our main fuse block on the firewall or on the strut tower. So we should be ready to just crank this guy over and not have any concerns of it starting on its own, but getting a good solid reading on this engine. This looks probably way different than anybody has ever seen, or if you have seen it, definitely pretty cool way to rotary compression test. One thing is we have our rotor 1 here. Let me see if I can get a little bit less glare here for you guys. So our rotor 1, we're negative 1.2, 1.4 PSI. I've calibrated this multiple times. It's basically a 0 to 200 PSI pressure sensor. Right now at nil, it's reading negative 1.2. I'm okay with that. And then we have a rotor 2 is right around 0.6, 0.7. This is constantly reading. As you can see, this little line going across, that is always recording data. So if I were to give a little pressure to it, it'll give a little pop on the screen, little pop pop as to where that actual pressure is reading. What we're gonna do is we're actually gonna create a save file. So I'm just gonna go through here. I'm gonna just do file. We're going to do a record on here. And then with the record, we're going to name it. So this one, we're gonna call it FC test 1, and today's date, which is, what is that, 7/14/24. So we'll go 7/14/24. Just so that I know when I open these up, because I got a bunch of different compression tests that I do, try to label them as well as possible. And then on here, it gives us a size as to how large we want it to be, but we only want to go for about 30 seconds, not 12 minutes and 46 seconds. So we're gonna just do 30-second compression test. Now, as soon as I hit this okay, it is going to start recording. I'm gonna have somebody else hold the camera while I crank it over. And then I'm gonna start the test. And with that, I got 30 seconds to then you'll start hearing the engine compression and see some blips in the screen. All right, that should give us enough to be able to see, and we'll read that file now. Records, we should see that it recorded storage, used 100% of my 30-second file. And then what we do is we will go over, we'll minimize this, and then we will go into our software, and we should be able to just go into the drivers of this and start typing in FC test. There it is, 1, and that is 7/14/24. That's the right one. So we'll click that and open. On here, this will get to basically kind of where that test should be. So I just move along here to try to find out where the test starts. Oh, there's our test. So that's about where we're gonna start there. You can go to each one of these and like just click it to see where you're at, but it's really hard to get it right at that tip. So what I like to do is I go over to our edit section on the compression to be able to get a zoomed in display, and I normally change that to like -8 so it zooms in that amount. And now we can really see the compression on each face. Now, on our front rotor, we'll start here. So we'll get right on that tip as close as we can. Right there's probably pretty good. So 80 PSI on our front. And then we have about 96 on our rear, okay? And now we're just looking for averages. So on a normal compression tester, whether it be you're trying to look at the gauge blip each time, that's kind of what this is doing, because it's giving us every face every time that it sees a pulse on the pressure, and it records it all. When you use like the regular rotary compression tester that just does an average of what each face did, now that's something where yes, you're getting a reading, averaging each rotor versus each pulse and then showing you every single pulse, and we can really dissect it, which is what I really like. I'm kind of a data nut, so that's one of my favorite things to be able to see and say, okay, well that one was 79 on that face, and then rotor 2 we're 95 on that one, and then on the rotor 1 now we're getting back to that one, we're at 79, and I can keep on pulling this graph over constantly to be able to see where we're at all the way through. So 102 on one on the rear, that was actually really good. I use this for all engines. You get great data from it. Getting all that data, now I feel confident in this engine where it's a perfectly good core. I mean, yes, it overheated. It could have broken water jackets on the irons. Yes, potential. I don't really care. I'm more interested to say that the rotors are probably good. The rotor housings might have some damage. Everything else on the motor internally is probably just fine. So we're gonna get to ripping this thing out and putting in the new motor. For this episode, really appreciate you guys for tuning in. That is our compression tester, rotary, what is it? That is my rotary diagnostic system compression tester for 2 rotors. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Definitely comment below on if you've ever seen one of these, or if you like it, or if you've never seen it before and you thought it was cool. Appreciate you guys.